I had been waiting for this night for months, my first ever Taylor Swift concert. I couldn't believe I finally managed to score tickets, and not just any tickets, but ones close enough to feel like I was part of the show. The excitement in the air was contagious, with fans dressed in all sorts of Taylor-inspired outfits. I had chosen a simple, classic look, a black dress with a red scarf, a nod to Taylor's Red era. As I made my way to my seat, I noticed a girl a few rows ahead of me, wearing an almost identical outfit. She had the same black dress and the same red scarf, but something about her felt off. It wasn't just that she was dressed like me, it was her demeanor. She stood out, even among the sea of Swifties. Her movements were slow, almost deliberate, as if she were there but not really there. The concert began, and I was swept away by the energy of the crowd and Taylor's performance. It was everything I had hoped for and more, but every now and then, my eyes were drawn to that girl. She wasn't dancing, singing along, or even smiling. She just stood there, staring up at the stage with an expression that I couldn't quite place. It was almost as if she were lost in a memory. During one of the quieter moments of the concert, Taylor began to sing All Too Well, a song that has always been special to me. The audience fell silent, and as I listened, I felt a shiver run down my spine. I glanced over at the girl again, and to my horror, I saw her staring directly at me. Her eyes were wide, and her expression had shifted from blank to something far more intense, almost angry. I quickly looked away, trying to shake off the unsettling feeling. It was probably just a coincidence, I told myself. But when I looked back, she was still staring. I could feel her gaze burning into me, even though I tried my best to focus on the concert. The more I tried to ignore her, the more I felt her presence, like a dark cloud hanging over me. As the concert went on, I started to feel uneasy, as if something wasn't right. I noticed that no one else seemed to be paying attention to the girl, even though she was behaving so strangely. It was like she was invisible to everyone but me. The more I thought about it, the more I began to doubt myself. Maybe I was just overthinking things, or maybe it was all in my head. But then, during Bad Blood, something happened that I couldn't explain. The lights in the arena dimmed, and the crowd erupted into cheers. The energy was electric, but as Taylor began to sing, the girl with the red scarf turned around and started walking toward me. Her movements were slow, almost robotic, and as she got closer, I could see that her eyes were glassy, like she was in a trance. My heart raced as she stopped right in front of me. I wanted to say something, to ask her what she was doing, but the words caught in my throat. She reached out and touched my scarf, her fingers cold against my skin. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the music. I froze, unsure of what to do. She stared at me for what felt like an eternity, her grip on my scarf tightening. I was about to pull away when suddenly she let go and walked back to her seat as if nothing had happened. I stood there, trembling, as the concert continued around me. For the rest of the night, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that had settled over me. I kept glancing over at the girl, but she was back to her original position, staring blankly at the stage. I felt like I was losing my mind, questioning if any of it had really happened. When the concert finally ended, I rushed out of the arena, desperate to get away from that girl and the unsettling experience. As I exited, I saw a group of fans gathered around a memorial display near the entrance. Curious, I walked over to see what it was about. The display was dedicated to a young woman who had died in a tragic accident a year ago. The photo on the memorial showed a girl wearing a black dress and a red scarf, the same outfit as mine, and the same outfit as the girl I had seen at the concert. My blood ran cold as I realized that the girl I had seen wasn't just a fan. She was the girl in the photo. I stumbled back, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't know what to think, but I knew one thing for sure. The girl at the concert wasn't alive. She was a ghost, a restless spirit who had somehow made contact with me. I left the venue in a daze, haunted by the experience, To this day, I can't listen to All Too Well without thinking of that girl and the terrifying encounter that still gives me chills.
I'll never forget the night I went to see Taylor Swift in concert. It was supposed to be an unforgettable experience, and it was, but not for the reasons I expected. I had been a fan for years, and when the opportunity came to see her live, I jumped at it. My friends and I managed to get tickets in the back row of the arena, which didn't bother us at all. We were just happy to be there, even if we were far from the stage. The night started off perfectly. The atmosphere was electric, and everyone around us was buzzing with excitement. We spent the first hour or so taking pictures, singing along with the opening acts, and just soaking in the energy. It was everything I had hoped for, but then things started to get weird. About halfway through the concert, I noticed a man sitting alone at the very end of our row. I hadn't seen him earlier, and it struck me as odd that he was by himself in a section that was otherwise packed with groups of friends and families. He was slouched over in his seat, dressed in dark clothes with a hood pulled low over his face. Something about him made me uneasy, but I tried to ignore it. After all, it wasn't unusual for someone to come to a concert alone. But as the night went on, I found myself glancing over at him more and more. He never moved, never cheered, and never sang along. He just sat there, staring straight ahead, his hands resting in his lap. No one else seemed to notice him, and I began to wonder if I was the only one who could see him. During the performance of Look What You Made Me Do, the lights in the arena flashed, casting strange shadows across the crowd. I glanced over at the man again, and this time I saw his face, or at least I thought I did. His hood had slipped back slightly, revealing pale, almost gray skin and hollow eyes that seemed to be sunken deep into his skull. He was staring directly at me, his lips twisted into a grotesque smile. I froze, a cold chill running down my spine. I wanted to tell my friends, but when I turned to them, they were completely engrossed in the show. I looked back at the man, and his smile had widened, his teeth yellow and decayed. My stomach churned as I realized that something was very, very wrong. The rest of the concert passed in a blur. I couldn't focus on the music or the performance, not with that man sitting so close to us. He didn't move, didn't blink, and didn't look away. It was as if he was waiting for something, or someone. Finally, the concert ended and the lights came up. People began to gather their things and head for the exits, but I couldn't bring myself to move. I was too scared to take my eyes off the man in the back row. My friends started urging me to get up, and I knew I couldn't stay there forever, so I reluctantly stood and turned to leave. But before I could take a step, I heard a whisper, a faint, raspy voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Don't leave me," it said. I spun around, my heart pounding in my chest, but the man was gone. His seat was empty, as if he had never been there at all. I hurried out of the arena with my friends, trying to shake off the fear that clung to me like a second skin. I told myself that it was just my imagination, that the man had simply left when the lights came on. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face, that twisted smile, those hollow eyes. I kept hearing the whisper, "Don't leave me," over and over again, like a broken record. I knew that the man wasn't just a concert goer. He was something else, something dark and malevolent. A few days later, I found myself searching online for any information about the man in the back row. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I had to find some explanation for what I had seen. After hours of searching, I came across a forum dedicated to paranormal experiences. One thread in particular caught my eye, "The Ghost of the Concert Hall." I clicked on it, my heart racing as I read the posts. People from all over the country had reported seeing a strange man at various concerts, a man who always sat in the back row alone and who disappeared before the end of the show. The descriptions were eerily similar to what I had seen. Dark clothes, hood pulled low, pale skin, and a twisted smile. The thread claimed that the man was a ghost, the spirit of someone who had died in a concert hall years ago. According to the story, he had been trampled in a crowd during a concert, and now his restless spirit haunted arenas, looking for someone to keep him company in death. I didn't know if I believed it, but the thought of that man, that ghost, still haunts me to this day. I've been to other concerts since then, but I always find myself looking over my shoulder, scanning the back row for any sign of him. And sometimes, when I'm alone at night, I still hear that whisper, "Don't leave me."
It was my third Taylor Swift concert, and I was beyond excited. The last two had been amazing, filled with joy and a sense of unity among the fans. There's something magical about being in a sea of people who love the same music, singing along to every word as if you're all part of something bigger. This time, however, the magic turned into something else, something far more sinister. The concert was held in an outdoor stadium, and my friends and I had managed to get decent seats, close enough to see Taylor clearly, but far enough to avoid the crush of the crowd near the stage. As the sun set and the lights of the stadium came up, the excitement in the air was palpable. People were chatting, laughing, and taking pictures, and I couldn't wait for the show to start. As we waited, I noticed a group of fans sitting a few rows ahead of us. They were dressed in Taylor Swift merch, their faces painted with glitter, and they seemed to be having the time of their lives. I smiled, thinking how great it was to be surrounded by people who were just as excited as I was. The concert began, and the energy was electric. Taylor took the stage, and the crowd erupted into cheers. It was everything I had hoped for, and I quickly got lost in the music. But as the night went on, something strange started to happen. During a break between songs, I looked over at the group of fans ahead of us, only to find that they were gone. I thought it was odd, but maybe they had gone to get snacks or use the restroom. I didn't think much of it until I realized that the seats they had occupied were completely empty. No bags, no jackets, nothing. It was as if they had just vanished. I mentioned it to my friends, but they shrugged it off, too caught up in the concert to care. I tried to do the same, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I kept glancing at those empty seats, waiting for the group to return, but they never did. As the concert continued, I noticed something even stranger. People in other sections of the stadium were disappearing too. Not all at once, but in small groups. One moment they'd be there, singing and dancing, and the next, their seats would be empty. I felt a growing sense of unease, but no one else seemed to notice. I turned to my friend Jessica and pointed out the empty seats. "Do you see that? Those people were just there a minute ago." Jessica looked where I was pointing and frowned. "Maybe they moved closer to the stage. But their stuff is gone too," I insisted. "It's like they were never there." Jessica glanced around, her expression turning from confused to concerned. "That is weird," she admitted, "but maybe we're just missing something. Let's not freak out." I tried to brush it off, but the disappearances continued. By the time Taylor reached the encore, entire sections of the stadium were nearly empty. The crowd had thinned out so much that it was impossible not to notice, yet Taylor kept performing as if nothing was wrong. I could feel panic rising in my chest, and I wasn't the only one. People around me started to whisper, pointing at the empty seats, their faces pale with fear. As the final song began, the lights in the stadium flickered. For a split second, everything went dark, and when the lights came back on, even more seats were empty. My friends and I were gripping each other's hands, too scared to move, too scared to leave. I kept telling myself that it was all in my head, that there had to be a logical explanation, but deep down, I knew that wasn't true. When the concert ended and the lights came up, the stadium was eerily quiet. The usual post-concert buzz was gone, replaced by a tense silence. My friends and I quickly gathered our things and hurried out, along with the few remaining fans. As we left, I couldn't help but look back at the stadium, expecting to see something, anything that would explain what had happened, but there was nothing. As we made our way to the parking lot, we saw security guards rushing toward the stadium, their faces serious. We didn't stick around to find out what was going on. We just wanted to get as far away from that place as possible. In the days that followed, I scoured the internet for any news about the concert, but there was nothing. No reports of missing people, no stories about strange occurrences. It was as if the entire thing had never happened. I reached out to other fans who had been there, but most of them didn't even remember the disappearances. It was like they had been erased from everyone's memory. To this day, I don't know what happened that night. All I know is that dozens of people vanished without a trace, and I was one of the few who noticed. I've been to other concerts since then, but I always keep an eye on the crowd, watching for any sign that it might happen again. And sometimes, late at night, I find myself wondering what happened to those people, and if they're still out there somewhere, trapped in the darkness that swallowed them whole.